The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are here first Mondays of every month, and I'm joined by Nancy Leader. My name is Andre, by the way. I'm with USA EBN, and I'm joined every Zeta Report by Nancy from ZetaTalk.com. Nancy, how are you?
I'm here, and I'm all excited about this hour. It's very timely, actually. It's called End Times Dates. People are always saying, well, when are we going to have the pole shift? When's the date? And the answer is, none shall know the date, which is what Jesus said for his return. The Zetas say the same thing, because it's not supposed to be known by man. We're supposed to follow the sequence of events and learn to care for each other and things like that, and not know the specific dates, because it would be used for opportunities for the thugs to take over and take advantage of others, good-hearted people. But we're going to try today to figure out the date from what we know of existing prophecy. But before we get into that, I want to read our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate, but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. To turn and head toward the exit door, as all flu strains eventually do, we have no more worries, right? Wrong. Nibiru is still nearby and heading outbound from the sun, ready for a passage past the hapless Earth, as it does every 3,600 years. Humanity is no more ready for this than when they were for the COVID-19 pandemic. When will Nibiru pass? Nibiru visibility is expected to be obvious by January 2021. That's what heads of state were told by the Bush administration way back when. But when will the passage happen? What solid clues do we have from all the prophecy, the Bible, the Kolbrin, the Quran, Mother Shipton, Edgar Cayce, and the Australian Aboriginals? It seems we are given descriptions but no firm date. The last weeks are detailed by the Zetas to take 7.3 weeks to avoid panic buying of toilet paper. Let's examine all the end times clues and signs to see if we can determine the rough timeline. The best one I am aware of is the Muslim prophecy known as the Hour. End times prophecy is often obtuse, subject to multiple interpretations. An example is the Muslim prophecy called the Hour. I had an email exchange a couple years ago with a Muslim scholar who requested the Zeta input on what he described as a mystery that they have been struggling with for 14 centuries. Quoting this Muslim scholar, Muhammad talked extensively about the coming of the hour and its consequences to humanity, even though he admitted that neither he nor the Archangel Gabriel knew precisely about the exact timing of its happenings. But nevertheless, he presented us with many approaching signs that will occur close together. One day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week. Well, what does that mean? That's the end of the quote. The Zetas had a response, albeit just as obtuse. In the opinion of the Zetas, one day like a year is a year of erratic weather, so that the seasons blend into one another. One day like a month is the last weeks, which include 3 days of darkness and other confusing events. One day like a week is the Zeta's predicted 5.9 rotation days of stoppage before the hour of the pole shift. That's close enough to a week. Where the weather has been erratic, even snow in summer in many countries, we have not reached the threshold for the blending of the seasons given by the Zetas, and going from the days when the heat of the hottest summer day to the cold of the coldest winter night would occur within days. We're not there yet. During the time of the last pole shift, this occurred of record in China, at least the description of what occurred prior to the 3 days of darkness. This is written during the reign of Emperor Qin, circa 1600 BC, before Christ. In the 29th day of King Qin, the sun was dimmed, the sun was distressed. During the last years of Qin, ice formed in mornings and frosts in the 6th month, that would be June. Heavy rainfall toppled temples and buildings. The sun and moon were ultimately untimely. Hot and cold weather arrived in disorder. The 5 cereal crops withered and died. End of the quote. The book of Revelations, chapters 15 to 16, also describe the end times. They also detail plagues, but again describe them as what the Zetas have detailed for the last weeks and the hour of the pole shift. Quoting Wikipedia, 7 angels are given 7 bowls of God's wrath, each consisting of judgments full of the wrath of God. Loathsome sores. The sea turns to blood. The water turns to blood. A major heat wave to scorch the planet with fire. A thick darkness overwhelms the kingdom. The great river Euphrates dries up. A global earthquake causes the cities of the world to collapse. End of the quote from Wikipedia on the Book of Revelations. Is there a timeline here? We get the red dust in the water turning it to blood, and the darkness and drought and earthquakes, but no timeline. Where is the repeated warnings about skin sores? What's this about? Since these prophecies and history come from the Middle East, what is the likely cause of these predictions about blisters and sores and biting gnats? Quoting CDC. Leishmania is a parasitic disease that is found in parts of the tropics, subtropics, and southern Europe. Leishmania is caused by infection with Leishmania parasites, which are spread by the bite of infected sand fleas. The most common forms are subcutaneous Leishmania, which causes skin sores. End of the quote. Well, that's likely it. The gnats are biting and spreading this parasitic infection. And all very confusing. However, let's switch to reports of what actually happened during the last passage of Nibiru, the Jewish Exodus time. The book of Exodus and the Torah describe the 10 plagues that descended upon Egypt. Quoting thought.co. The water became blood, and the first plagues began. The water, even in wood and stone jars, was undrinkable. Fish died, and the air was filled with a horrid stench. The second plague brought in an influx of frogs. In the third plague, he struck the earth, and gnats flew up from the dust. The infestation took over every man and animal around. The fourth plague affected only the lands of Egypt. The swarm of flies was unbearable. The fifth plague sent a deadly disease through the animals they relied upon. The sixth plague resulted in horrendous and painful boils appearing on every Egyptian and their livestock. Well, here we go with the skin sores again. And the quote continues, the seventh plague brought torrential rains, thunder that had killed animals and people and crops. The eighth plague would prove to be the most devastating. Locust insects ate every green plant they could find. 3 days of complete darkness stretched over the lands of Egypt in the ninth plague. End of the quote. At last, some clear end-time signs that we can identify, ending in the notorious 3 days of darkness. We have already experienced red dust, locust swarms, and frantic frogs to some extent. Frantic frogs were unlikely to give us a timeline, quoting the Observer's site in 2008. In the days prior to the gigantic earthquake that devastated Sichuan province in China, odd swarms of frogs were seen in the streets of cities in the area and have subsequently been identified as unusual animal behavior by the type that is thought by some geologists to preclude or precede earthquakes. Now it has developed that similar frog appearances have been taking place in Bakersfield, California, for about 2 weeks, and nobody's sure why. Strange swarms of frogs also appeared before the 6.9 Loma Prieta earthquake in October of 1989. End of the quote. Well, there you go. If you have frog swarms, it's because we're going to have an earthquake, and they're reacting to the electronic screech in the rock. What about locust swarms? We have had those forever here and there around the globe. Most recently, North Africa, now in an obvious sign that the end times have again arrived. The desert locusts are swarming again in East Africa. Locust swarms emerge after plentiful rain encourages their propagation, followed by drought, wherein they take wing seeking vegetation to eat. The drought and deluge cycles predicted by the Zetas. They are indeed an end-time sign. The Chinese have deployed an army of 100,000 ducks to consume the locust swarms attacking Xinjiang. Quoting strange sounds. Potentially threatening situation is developing along both sides of the Red Sea, where ongoing breeding is causing locust numbers to increase on the coasts of Egypt, Sudan, and Tyre, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. In addition, numerous desert locust swarms have been breeding in India, Iran, and Pakistan since June 2019. And some have migrated to southern Iran, where recent heavy rains have nurtured a breeding ground that could generate swarms in the spring. End of the quote. Well, and there we are. So how can you say that the locust swarms mean here it comes, the passage of Nibiru, when this stuff is happening on and off here and there all the time? Now we have bitter red-colored water as the first plague in the book of Exodus. Certainly we are experiencing a lot of red dust, turning the skies red, but it's not yet making our water blood red and bitter. In the opinion of the Zetas, dust this heavy will not occur until just before the last weeks. Quoting the book of Exodus, the river was bloody, the earth was filled with redness, it twisted about itself like a coil, it remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. Quoting the Egyptian papyrus, blood is everywhere, the river is blood. Quoting the Kolbrin, the river was bloody and blood was everywhere. Those who did drink from the river vomited it up. End of the quotes. What can we use here for timeline clues? We have instead a plethora of clues that are in the end times, but beyond red dust and irregular weather and the frantic frogs, we have petrol blankets of fire dropping from the skies. Oh, this was recently recorded October 1st, 2019, off the coast of Chile, and was deemed not a meteor, falling blankets of fire. Quoting RT, the scientists concluded they found no remains, vestiges, or evidence of a meteorite left behind by the luminous and incandescent objects. Whatever the mystery entities were, they did not leave some trace behind. However, burning foliage at a number of sites. End of the quote. Well, something fell from the sky, setting the foliage on fire, but it wasn't a meteor. What was it? Well, they have a volcano nearby, and it's what has been reported. This is a product of greasy elements in the tail of Nibiru and the heat from the volcano. Ipuwer, written by the Egyptians, closely matches the book of Exodus in the Bible. Quoting the Egyptian papyrus Ipuwer, gates, columns, and walls are consumed by fire. The sky is in confusion. End of the quote. The Kolbrin, based on Egyptian records, also records a strange flowing fire. I quote from the Kolbrin. In the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. The face of the land was battered and devastated by a hail of stones, which smashed down all that stood in the path of the torrent. They swept down in hot showers, and strange flowing fire ran along the ground in their wake. Volcanoes run down the west coast of the Americas, and Central America is rift with them. Thus, these stories of a blanket of fire dropping from the sky were recorded there also. Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Mayans, states, people were drowned in a sticky substance raining from the sky, and then there was a great din of fire above their heads. End of the quote. Why would such a blanket of fire form during a pole shift hour when this does not happen today? Per the Zetas, two factors are involved. The greasy tail of Nibiru is thick at that time, wafting past the earth, and second, the hurricane-force winds have stripped away some of the atmosphere. Thus, oxygen at the higher latitudes is missing. Thus, the fire occurs close to the ground. Quoting Velikovsky in his book, Worlds in Collision, the tails of comets are composed mainly of carbon and hydrogen gases. Lacking oxygen, they do not burn in flight, but the flammable gases passing through an atmosphere containing oxygen will be set on fire, binding all the oxygen available at the moment. The descent of a sticky fluid which came earthward and blazed with heavy smoke is recalled in the oral and written traditions of the inhabitants of both hemispheres. End of the quote. Among the 10 plagues listed in the book of Exodus are dead fish dying in the water, in the blood-red water. Well, we certainly have fish kills galore these past few years. These experts cite oxygen deprivation, but in the main there is no explanation. Per the Zetas, this is from methane released from shifting plates under the water. Methane kills. Quoting New Sky in January 2011. Around 2 million fish have died in the Chesapeake Bay area in Maryland, just days after two similar incidents elsewhere in the U.S. baffled scientists. Quoting Free Republic, also in January 2011. A survey conducted by the Federation of Fishermen's Colony of Paraguana on the coast of the state indicates that at least 100 tons of fish, sardine, croaker, and catfish, have turned up dead off the coast of Paraguana. End of the quote. Are pandemics such as the current COVID-19 mentioned in End Times prophecy? Oh, that would be interesting. Only in Mother Shipton's prophecies, where she implies a high fever illness springing up on the border between Russia and China, quoting Mother Shipton. And yellow men great power gain from mighty bear with whom they've lain. These mighty tyrants will fail to do, they fail to split the world in two. But from their acts a danger bred, an arg, leaving many dead, and physics finds no remedy, for this is worse than leprosy. End of the quote. The Zetas opine that she was referring to a Siberian virus from melted permafrost, mutating and merging with China viruses. A Siberian Pitho virus was discovered in thawing permafrost in 2003, but to date has not caused a pandemic. So unfortunately, other than the Prophet Muhammad's warning that a year when the seasons will be utterly confused will precede the last weeks, we don't have a firm date clue at all to a timeline, no clue to a timeline. Locust swarms, frantic frogs, red dust, fish kills, and even petrol fireballs are all with us today. The list of signs that we are in the end times is long, and so many of these warnings have already taken place. In our October 7th, 2019 Zeta Report show, we listed many of them. The dark twin appearing in our skies was predicted as the Hopi blue Kachina and as the dusky blue Hindu god Kali. These are matched with the appearance of Nibiru itself as the Hopi red Kachina and the Hindu god Shiva. But these warnings do not give us a timeline. Quoting Hopi prophecy, the return of the blue Kachina, who is also known as a Naga Sohu, will be the forewarning that tells us there will soon be a new day, a new way of life, and a new world coming. Okay? And then it goes on, when the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which will come very close and sit in our heavens watching us. This purifier will show us many miraculous signs in our heavens. Then one morning we will awaken to a red dawn. The sky will be the color of blood, end of the quote, and presumably things get worse from there. The Lakota Sioux legend about the appearance of the white buffalo came true in the late 1990s. Albinism worldwide is appearing and on the increase in many species now, and in the opinion of the Zetas, the cause is the roiling core of the earth. Cave fish do not need coloration to protect from the sun, so this is in our DNA. But is this a timeline clue? Unfortunately, no. Trumpeting, heard in the skies, is predicted in the book of Revelation and was also described in the Kolbrin, but is associated with the last weeks. Quoting the Kolbrin, the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens, and the people became as frightened beasts without a herdsman. The doom shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightnings. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard. The whole of the land moved and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony. End of the quote. Well, that certainly sounds like a lot of trumpeting, but we're getting that already, trumpeting. We've already had that starting in 2011 when the lakes near Kiev and Belarus started vibrating. And like trumpets and horns, monsters roaring. These were noises from vibrating water recorded in Canada and Tampa Bay. You should hear. I've recorded the sounds. They sound like. Oh. There is also a Finland legend about the mythical Galerhorn, sounding to warn flooding from the Baltic Sea, which will occur during the hour of the pole shift per the Zetas. Once again, no way to determine a timeline here. We are also told that Nibiru will appear in the skies like a writhing red-orange dragon in the last weeks. We're already seeing Nibiru and his attendant moon swirls and thick red dust aplenty, but not to the degree predicted for the last weeks. Thus, once again, no timeline clues. Quoting the Kolbrin, then with the dawning, men saw an awesome sight. There, riding on a black, roiling cloud, came the destroyer, newly released from the confines of the sky vaults, and she raged about the heavens, for it was her day of judgment. End of the quote. Quoting the book of Revelations, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 horns and 7 heads, and 7 crowns upon its heads. Quoting the book of Exodus, the earth was filled with redness. It twisted about itself like a coil. It remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. Mother Shipton likewise refers to Nibiru as a dragon. I quote, the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore. Not every soul on earth will die as the dragon's tail goes sweeping by. End of the quote. The Hadiths also have a prophecy about the deserts of Arabia becoming lush. Amazingly, this also has just occurred within this past year. This comes hand in hand with fish appearing in the Dead Sea. For the Zetas, this is due to an aquifer under Iraq being squeezed by their predicted African plate roll, which is in process. Once again, a solid clue, but no timeline. Quoting Hadith number 2208, the last hour will come till the land of Arabia once again becomes meadows and rivers. Quoting Ezekiel 47:11, fishermen will stand along the shore from En-Gedi To En Eglaim, there will be places to spread the nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the Mediterranean Sea, but the swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They will be left for salt. End of the quote. This has already happened. It's the greening of Arabia. Another repeated and fish in the Dead Sea. Another repeated mentioned sign of a pending passage of Nibiru is an earth wobble. The wobble has been with us since 2004 and is getting worse. Because of the cover-up over Nibiru, evidence of the daily earth wobble is very much ignored by the media. And unless it gets to the point of literally turning the globe upside down for a day, or having the sun rise over the North Pole or over the South Pole, I fear we won't have an admission that Nibiru is real. Ancient prophecy predicts confusion, but not a distinct timeline. Quoting from the book of Enoch, "And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed for them. And these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed, and the thoughts of those on earth shall err concerning them." End of the quote. Well, the book of Enoch was getting a little too precise about what to look for, and the powers that be many centuries ago took the book of Enoch out of the Bible. Anything that might warn you and get the common man power and take power from the elite, well, they just can't have that. Edgar Cayce, his predictions on what would be the start of the severe earth changes was, and I quote, "a breaking up in the South Seas," end of quote, followed by a heaving and falling of land in the Mediterranean. This was breathtakingly accurate, occurring during and shortly after the time of the December 26, 2004 tsunami quake that tore a 700-mile stretch along a fault line near Sumatra. In readings 311-8 on April 9, 1932, Cayce was asked, "How soon will the changes in the Earth's activity begin to be apparent?" His answer, "When there is the first breaking up of some conditions in the South Sea, and those as apparent in the sinking or rising of that's almost opposite same, or in the Mediterranean, and in the Etna area, then we may know it has begun." Well, it turns out, the Mediterranean area he was referring to was exactly, I put a pin through the globe, and you pop out near where the tsunami happened by Sumatra. So, all right, so we know it's begun, according to Cayce. Note that the December 26, 2004 tsunami quakes occurred within days of two quakes on December 23rd, an 8.1 in Tasmania and an 8.2 Auckland quake in rapid succession at the juncture of the Antarctica and Indo-Australia plates. This was just above the South Pole and truly in the South Seas. The original breaks in the South Seas are in an area directly opposite the Mediterranean. Cayce states that sinking or rising in the Mediterranean would occur next. By December 13, 2005, reports were coming in that the Mediterranean level was astonishingly and unseasonably low in Venice during the flood season. Off the coast of Barcelona to the west and to the east in Croatia, beaches so low the populace cannot remember such a time. Edgar Cayce described the geological changes as a result of the pole shift, but once again we are not getting a time frame. Quoting Cayce, "As to the changes, physical again. The earth will be broken up in the western portion of America. The great portion of Japan must go into the sea. The upper portion of Europe will be changed as in the twinkling of an eye. Land will appear off the coast of America. There will be the upheavals in the Arctic and the Antarctic that will make for the eruption of volcanoes in the torrid areas. and there will be a shifting then of the poles, so that where there has been those of a frigid or semi-tropical will become more tropical, and moss and fern will grow. In other words, a lot of places in the globe, as the Zetas have laid out, will switch around. With the North Pole is a different place is going to be up there where the North Pole should be, and a different place will be down there where the South Pole should be. And it's off the bulge of Brazil for North Pole, and in India, centered in India for the South Pole. And you can seek your safe locations to go to accordingly if you take stock in what the Zetas say, in the opinion of the Zetas. So Cayce gives us the start of the Earth changes and then jumps to the hour of the pole shift itself. But the Zetas have provided a sequence of events, with a 10 of 10 being the pole shift itself, and a 9 of 10 being the last weeks. And we are now in the 8 of 10 with the 7 of 10 plate movements completing. Where this started out in 2010 as a prediction, an opinion of the Zetas, their predictions in Indonesia and South America and the Caribbean have played out as predicted. The 7 of 10 plate movements are not yet completed, with the African roll and New Madrid rip still pending. Then, in a few short months, if Nibiru is widely visible in the skies, you will be ahead of the game. Remember, we had scant warning that COVID-19 was to emerge and become a scourge, a worldwide pandemic. Don't wait to be taken by surprise again. And this is the end, Andre, of my prepared remarks. Do you have a comment or two? I think I put Andre to sleep. I'll talk a little bit about chickens.
I'm back.
Hi.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been doing Zoom calls so much I should have this down by now, but no, I was gonna say that there's a lot of buzz out there in different areas. I know that I did see some stuff on Twitter from the Dark Judge, so I know that that's going to be covered in New Zeta Talk, or is that from this Sunday that's out right now?
Yeah. I actually on all this doubles analysis, he says, they look different. Then I do a doubles analysis to confirm that. And so it's kind of like a love affair. I keep popping up with this stuff, and he says, thank you, Zeta Talk, and pointing to, the newsletters or whatever, where my doubles analysis was done, including his comments. So, but just yesterday, or the last 2 days, Nancy's always talking about the pole shift in Nibiru. What about that? What about that? He did not deny it. But he did say it's classified. And when somebody said, well, is it going to create are we going to be devastated or wrecked or whatever? And he said no, that they have ways of blocking that. And he wasn't clear about what he was talking about. Like Q was always talking vague. And then he said, and then the person was asking, what, like Comet Alex, where it kind of disintegrated? And he said, yes. So presumably he was talking about debris, but he said, but he can't talk about this because it's classified. Well, Q has never denied Nibiru either, and in fact has displayed photos that clearly show it next to the sun. And the same thing with Trump and Trump Jr. They've the blue angels going overhead, and you take a look at that sky, and there it is. So they are implying this, but they're pretty quiet about it. So I'm wondering, ahead of January 2021, which was a human computation as to when it would be close enough that the heads of state around the world would no longer be able to deny it. And Bush told that to heads of states way back in like 2005 or something, way back. And so they're going off that, like, we got to get ready, which is why they like all the martial law moves that COVID-19 has allowed. Everybody sit in your house now, be good, and just march when we tell you, no more rioting or you'll be arrested, no clustering. Well, they like that control, at least some of them do. And so we're in the area here now where do we really want to give up all the martial law moves that have been made, because as Zeta say, they're likely to become permanent as we move into the era, which seems to be upon us, of saying, oh, Nibiru is real and it's going to make a passage, but don't worry, it's not going to wreck everything. Yes, it will. Big floods along the coastlines, big earthquakes, everybody's. But the happy news is that people are ordering baby chicks. They're planting their gardens. I hear from people that you can't even order seeds online because the seed banks are empty. There's so many people are interested in starting gardens. They have to start learning to save seed. That's the important thing. It's not just,
right.
I can buy seed, for heaven's sakes. If you can't buy seed, then what? You ought to have dried seeds in a can somewhere in Ziploc bags. Some of these seeds are so easy. Like corn or beans, or, you just shuck things off, and as long as it's dry, some things take a little prep, like tomatoes. You have to rinse them off, or after they molder, you have to molder away the slime. But if you're smart about it, you can just take a slice of tomato and lay it on some soil, and boop, up come the little tomato plants. Same with strawberries. But you have to get a book. Seed to Seed is great. Learn how to do this stuff. Pumpkin seed, winter squash, you can't ask for anything better. It lasts through the winter. You can eat the leaves, and the like. Amaranth and corn are as good as red meat when mixed together. So, sorry about that, folks. So that it's super easy. Don't throw the pulpy seeds away when you carve up a pumpkin. Rinse them off, put them on a plate, let them dry, and save them, because every pumpkin plant will give you several pumpkins, and the leaves, etc. Like you can eat grape leaves too. Some of this stuff is a little bitter, but if you're a good cook, you'll figure out what to do with it. Right?
Right. Yeah. I wanted to say maybe this is a segue to some other information that you have for us, but went out of town this weekend, and I won't say where because I don't know. I don't know if I was supposed to go out of town, but I did. But I
broke
did,
the law.
And I had the windows rolled up the whole way and my seatbelt on sometimes.
Did you wear your mask? Yeah. All right.
I wore my mask of love and light. Yes, I did. Sure.
Yes. All right.
And my one of my family members recently, she and her husband bought a little farm with acreage that they're going to rent out, but they do have chickens, and boy, when chickens are happy, they produce. I'm like, holy crap, I think they have like 6 or 7, and they're getting, now that it's nice out, they're getting, I don't know, she's saying like a dozen every 2 days, at least, maybe 14.
Yes,
I'm like, wow.
Yeah. You have to. It is a surge. Now, when they're tiny, of course, they don't lay eggs. But when they become like,
right.
I think it's 6 months or 8, somewhere in there, and they just lay like crazy. And they prefer to wait until it's sunny, because the normal instinct is that's when you're going to lay eggs and have baby chicks result, So, but there are times when there's not that many, but they just seem to keep popping out those eggs. And after a few years, 5, I don't know, whatever years, they stop laying so many eggs, and then they usually are destined for the soup pot, is the way it goes. Is that movie Chicken Run displays, there was one chicken that couldn't lay eggs anymore, and the other says, well, why didn't you tell me? I would have given you some of mine. So she's going to go to the soup pot, Yeah. But I kept chickens, for a few months, in my basement. It was part of an experiment with a nonprofit we had running here to see if you could raise them indoors and what the problems would be. The one problem I found was lack of sunlight. I had to give them vitamin D, or they got weak legs and then jump down and break a leg. So
right. So
I noticed
you do oysters? No. It's vitamin D. Yeah. So that's not calcium.
Vitamin D, yeah, and had to add it to their water.
Mm-hmm.
But what I noticed is that the people with hobby farms around here, they let their chickens out to free range, even in the dead of winter, for a little sunlight.
Yep, get a little sunlight.
And that works, So that's the answer to that. So, all right. So I wrote some notes down. They need sunlight year-round, even in the dead of winter. Let them out. Chickens are omnivores and will consume almost anything. I've seen my chickens eat an entire melon rind. They will cannibalize each other, too, if one is sick or weak, and can develop a bad habit of eating their own eggs. So if that misbehavior happens, you must remove the naughty criminals and put them in the soup pot. Really, you have to, because they'll teach each other to do that. So in the spring they instinctively make fertile eggs, and yes, you must have a rooster on hand for that. The chickens, for some reason, often lay all their eggs in one nest, so the most maternal in the flock will sit on all the eggs, being a brooder. She will pluck out all her tummy feathers so the eggs can be close to her skin, her warm skin, and she will turn the eggs to keep them all warm on all sides. And they sit on like 18 eggs at one brooder, sitting there, and everybody else is off flocking around having a party. Just leave the one with the chores. When you get a box of chicks from a hatchery, remember to stick each little beak in a bowl of water, as they don't know how to drink, not having a mum to teach them. They came from the hatchery. If moving to a new coop, keep them inside for at least 2 days, so they begin to think of this new coop as home. Roosters are very they're very protective. I found I had to carry about a garbage can lid as a shield, as an attacking rooster is no joke. Really, they jump up and they ball up those little claws.
And
they go whammo.
And they fly jump, and they come at you with the spikes on the back of their legs.
Yeah,
they're throwing those things at you while they're jumping at you. They're aggressive.
Yeah, right on the kneecap, and wow, does that hurt? So I would come in the coop with my garbage can lid. I did have a very tame rooster, however, and he was, from little tiny chick on, handled. We constantly handled him, and he followed me around. He thought I was his mummy, and so I could pick him up and hold him, and he was just, there was no problem there. You don't attack mummy, but the others, they didn't have as much human contact, and ouch. But they defend their hens that way too, from chicken hawks or dogs or anything that comes around. If you've got roosters, the chickens get a chance to rush for safety. Chickens definitely have a language. When the rooster finds an anthill, he will cluck, and the hens come running. Cluck, 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 cluck. When they greet the dawn, there is no sleeping and no snooze button. When they are setting down to sleep in their roosts, they sing to each other. And yes, you can make them into pets and stroke their soft feathers. And that's the end of my chicken talk.
Oh, quick question.
Yes?
Have you ever experienced a hug from either like a chicken, a goose? I know that goats give hugs. Have you noticed that? I mean, dogs are dogs.
Never.
Dogs just love you, and that's just their thing. But some of these other domesticated animals, it's like, sometimes I don't know if they seem a little smarter than, I don't know.
I have not.
Aren't chickens just baby dinosaurs anyway? I mean.
Yeah, yes. And birds are there. It's a part of the dinosaur evolution, reptilian evolution. They're not that far from reptilians either, although they're warm-blooded. I've never gotten a hug from a chicken. I've hugged chickens. You pick them up and you hold them.
Maybe put the shield down and...
But I know I've been told by a goat herdsman that the goats give hugs, And dogs do, really. They come up and they try to hug you, I had a dog that didn't want to go in the vet's office, and boy, did he hug my leg. He had a good grip on there. No. As I tried to
know what's next,
him across the floor, no. So they know how to do that, but... Oh, anyway, you got to get into it, guys. And saving seed, this is the missing piece. It drives me
Farmers
crazy.
market
Yeah,
too.
yeah. People talk about, oh, we're going to garden. They never say, well, we're going to save seed today. And it's like it's magical. It's going to drop from the sky, or somebody in the area will have seed. What? That's supposed to be you. And then what you do is
That's you.
yeah, you dry it. You put it in a sealed